her apology this morning, it just doesn't wash. We've had no apology for the threats to us over telling the truth, that things that she's now admitted. And I think until that happens, it will look like a very hollow apology indeed.
It's an interesting choice of words there by Baroness Mone, saying, well, and actually she reiterated that this wasn't a crime, but admitted to lying to the press. Several people on social media making the distinction that lying to the press is basically just lying to the people. The press are asking questions of people like Baroness Mone when they want to get to the bottom of an investigation. If you lie to the press, you're basically lying to the public.
That's absolutely right. I mean, we were threatened repeatedly throughout our reporting at Byline Times on this story. Her representatives, lawyers, indeed the couple themselves, repeatedly denied they had any involvement in this firm. And of course, now through reporting from ourselves and others, we know that was completely untrue. They were involved. They did stand to benefit from these £200 million worth of COVID contracts. But it's not just that. When journalists are, trying to uncover the truth behind these kind of stories, and they're threatened with extremely costly, frightening, actually, libel action. It does take a toll, and it wasn't myself who worked on this story, but libel law in the UK doesn't benefit the public. On the whole, it benefits the powerful, because it's the reporters who have to prove what they're saying is true rather than the other way around. And can cost, run into the hundreds of thousands of pounds, and you don't know that you're going to get that money back. So it's a deeply, concerning process. And, I think her apology this morning, it just doesn't wash. We've had no apology for the threats to us over telling the truth, that things that she's now admitted. And I think until that happens, it will look like a very hollow apology indeed.
And of course, another thing that's been pointed out is that there is no penalty for sending out letters to journalists and everybody else asking uncomfortable questions. If later on you're found to have sort of said, oh, okay, well, no, I admitted you were right in what you were trying to look into. There is no penalty for having sent those letters. Josiah, let's look forward. What happens next? We know that there's a National Crime Agency investigation. Is there any question of the money being returned, possibly? Where does this story go next?
That's right. Well, there is an ongoing National Crime Agency investigation, as you say, and the couple deny any illegality. But there's also the government is suing PPE MedPro over the fact that the vast majority of this PPE, which they ordered just 44 days after founding the company, was completely unusable and deemed unfit for purpose in the NHS. So huge amounts of taxpayers' money potentially lost. And of course, now we know that was stashed offshore in the Isle of Man and elsewhere. So there is this legal process, both in terms of the criminal investigation and also this government legal action as well. But I think the government sort of belatedly under pressure stepped up to this, and the fact that so much was lost in these cronyistic sort of contracts. This PPE fast lane, which has been reported extensively on, this was sort of powerful figures saying, look, I've got a pal who can sort some PPE. In this case, it was Baroness Mone saying a contact she knew of, in other words, PPE MedPro, could sort out a lot of PPE for the government, and then much of it proving completely unusable. And we now know that potentially billions of pounds were wasted through that. So it's not just questions for Baroness Mone and Doug Barrowman, it's also questions for the government as well. And of course that is now being raised in the coronavirus inquiry as well, which is currently going on.
Something that rather strangely did come up in that interview, Baroness Mone saying, well, it's actually the people who've taken the decisions that need to be looked at. Just last question, Josiah, before we go. It is unusual, though, is it not, for people who are being investigated by the government and by the NCA to be given a platform to put their side of the story? I mean, I'm sure other people who are being investigated would also relish to get their side of the story out in the public.
It's very odd indeed, and actually, when we were starting to report on this story, first we were told that even the correspondence of them threatening us with libel action was confidential. We couldn't even report on that. We were told that there's a National Crime Agency investigation going on, which meant that they couldn't comment, and it would be wrong for us to do any more reporting on it because there was a police investigation. Of course, that all looks silly, basically, now that she's done this national TV interview with her husband, and it just makes the whole story, the whole saga, seem even more shambolic and misleading, I think, for voters and for journalists who are hoping to uncover cronyism, wrongdoing, wherever it lies.